Hi everyone, this is Maisie from the University of Sydney. I'm currently working as a sessional lecturer at the University of Sydney, and I'm teaching two units. One is international media practice, the other is legal and ethical issues in media practice. So I'm going to present a co-authored paper with Xu Chen from Xiamen University. Xu, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Xu Chen. I just graduated from QUT in September this year, and then I joined the Xiamen University. Actually, I've been just teaching for 1 week in Xiamen University. So, hi everyone, greetings from China. Now, I'm handling this presentation to Meizi. Thank you.
Thank you, Xu. So today we're going to talk about the multi-channel networks in China. It's very interesting because when we first started working on the project, we saw that we would focus on the sustainability of the multi-channel network in China. However, when we actually started to do field work and try to get in contact with our interviewees, one of the internet influencers, told us that he just didn't think that the MCN, the multi-channel network, is sustainable in China. So that was a really interesting start. So in case you're not familiar with the concept of MCN, which is the short term of multi-channel network, it can be traced back to 2007 when Google started to professionalize YouTubers and get a hold of the faster changing industry. Now, borrowing from the battle, MCN is by no means a new creation, but merely a remix of existing media roles that dealt with new media professions. Then fast forward to 2020, Chinese short video platform TikTok or Douyin are sweeping over the world, bringing tens of thousands of internet influencers to a wider audience, generating and contributing to an ecosystem known as online celebrity economy, or we could say the Wanghong economy. Despite Douyin and TikTok almost sharing the identical digital architecture, they may follow different trajectory of the development in China and the overseas respectively. So while existing research has shown that MCN is playing a vital role in the short video industry in China, little is known on how Chinese MCNs might utilize TikTok and their potential impact on the industry. Through interviews with Chinese MCN and their incubated internet influencers, as well as some media practitioners of the field, this paper intends to examine the MCN-driven short video industry in China, how they are adapting to, as well as shaping the constantly changing digital video industry and the implications for the creative class. So here is a brief structure of our paper. We will start from background, where we will introduce you guys to the MCN and platformization. And then we will look into infrastructure, governance, and monetization. And finally, that's the conclusion. So starting from the background, we think that the success of short video and live streaming industry is to some extent not replicable in other parts of the world. And this is not simply due to the scale and variety of content and monetization, but also largely attributable to the Chinese characteristic of the industry. The first reason is mistrust and fake goods. We think that the fundamental drive for recommendation-based shopping resides in the urge or the need to filter fake or less qualified products and then obtain the optimal shopping experience. And then more importantly, it is repairing the long-damaged relationship between commercial companies and consumers via internet influencers as the intermediaries. So mistrust in brands or qualities calls for innovations in marketing, branding, and advertising. And similarly, other markets and foreign companies also emphasized on social media marketing, but then they're predominantly after wide coverage of digital services rather than a remedy for mistrust. However, for Chinese companies, we think that they are seeking for both. The second reason is the advanced development of online advertising market. So because of this mistrust in products and brands, Chinese advertising agencies have long been trying out new things and adventures. In simple words, they are dedicated in interactive online ads, for instance. In-show ads have been adopted widely across different distribution platforms, where advertisements are embedded in the plot delivered by the actors in the show or program wearing matching costumes. This suggests that the Chinese consumers are getting used to, or at least being trained for, the new shopping experience, and they are more susceptible to live streamed shopping, or in general terms, the new social media shopping. So against the backdrop of mistrust and this online training, and prompted by the fast-growing industry of MCN and digital platforms, Chinese short video and live streaming industry are thriving in the market. And in this paper, we will examine the entanglement between MCNs and the platformization of Chinese short video industry through the lenses of infrastructure, governance, and markets. And we will investigate the implications on emerging monetization models and short video creativity beyond the Chinese market. So moving on to the infrastructure. Infrastructurally, algorithms of Douyin and TikTok are drastically different from that of YouTube. Weibo and other social media platforms in that it is decentralized, meaning that online celebrities are treated as equal with entry-level creators. The algorithm only measures content in terms of how many times it has been played, and not the account, which means they are not looking at how many followers it has. So this differs from the algorithm of YouTube and many others, where accounts with more followers normally get pushed and promoted with programmatic ads and relevant income. This means that Douyin and TikTok are training their creators to constantly work and innovate in their content, rather than relying on their fan communities to promote or repost regardless of quality. But then it also suggests that platforms are using algorithms to reinforce their corporate values, forcing creators to adapt to the environment. The Euro algorithm is facilitating a competitive environment, forcing creators to create, refine, and innovate, which means only the best content will get pushed to users, which is also one of the reasons why Douyin and TikTok are so successful. But on a different note, the algorithm, just like any other digital platform, tend to have its own appetite as well, which means it can be utilized to promote certain content, even if they are not creative or original. As for the MCN, they are making the most out of the content creators, and sometimes they are using the algorithms. Or to be more specific, they are taking advantage of the algorithm by copying and pasting trending styles and creating fake accounts to implement live streamed shopping. And additionally, as Cunningham has identified, the content is gendered, with pretty girls on the stage and lonely boys behind the screens. So the second point would be governance. In this sector, I'm going to talk about the parallel platform and content transfer. The first big section would be copyright and infringement. Douyin and TikTok, we know that they are twin platforms, or in other words, parallel platforms that operated by different sectors of one company, that is ByteDance. They parallel in many levels, but differed in governance, monetization, as well as the cultural elements that embedded in those digital infrastructures. For parallel platforms, content transfer can be a common issue. where trending content can be borrowed, remixed, recreated, and reposted on another platform, either from Douyin to TikTok, or from TikTok to Douyin, or between different domestic short video platforms in China. We learned that, based on the interviews with video editor at Douyin, we learned that they would constantly scrubbing TikTok for inspiration, which is pretty normal. And content transfer is nothing unusual to them. However, this phenomenon also suggested that copyright of short video content is currently a black spot in legislation globally. It's sort of like similar to the remix culture, where video DJs play with a variety of materials in a different sequence. It can be challenging to define whether short video content is original or not. However, copyright laws require content to be original to be protected by the law, where social media content seems to be stuck in the first step. So because of this, content transfer is the new norm on Douyin and TikTok, either supported by platforms or accomplished by individual account, in the sense that this will not offend anyone anyway. On top of this, unfortunately,
this is Crystal. I think we might have to wrap up very quickly in a few seconds now because we're over time.
Okay. So let's move on to. Okay, let me just finish this paragraph. Copyright is a list problem that varies platforms and content creators as they dance between the party line and bottom line. For online influencers, they are sometimes working on eggshells, worrying about party standards or being shut down. Online short video industry poses new threats to content regulation, and this also means that it is a gray area not properly regulated or protected by relevant legislations. So our preliminary finding is that the direct implications to the international market include the direct content transfer from foreign platforms like TikTok, with careful consideration on party policy, party line, and user preferences. Chinese MCNs are restricted in this sense. Nevertheless, internet influencers as Li Ziqi has successfully transported her content on YouTube. TikTok has taken the world by storm. The question would be, what next? Will the MCN industry in China has a direct or indirect impact on the international market? What about profit models and monetization procedures? And these are the research questions that we will continue to investigate for this paper. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you, Meizi and Shui. We will now transit to Iran and Bradley. So get ready to share your screens and we can kick off.
All right. Share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can see it fine and we can hear you fine.
Great. All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our work at this symposium. My name is Iran. I'm an assistant professor from the University of Georgia. Today, I'm going to talk about research I'm working with Dr. Bradley Becker that explores the TikTok economy through a rising yet niche section of TikTok influencers. That is, influencers who create and diffuse sport-related content. Before I go into the research context, I want to clarify the relationship between TikTok and Douyin, if you do not yet. As introduced in previous presentations, TikTok and Douyin are twin apps. Both belong to ByteDance in China. And Douyin has more advanced features with e-commerce, so I believe our work on Douyin will shed light on social commerce practice on TikTok in the near future. So when we think about sport influencers, we might immediately refer to athletes. Brad and I did a study on athletes' usage of TikTok this summer, and we thought that short video is a great medium for these athletes to demonstrate their skills. For example, we see that Laurie gymnast perform lacrosse challenges and LeBron James dance awkwardly with his son. Both posts attract lots of likes on TikTok as well as media reports. So beyond playfulness and performativity, TikTok allows athletes to showcase an authentic side of their personal brand. Then how about everyday people, the sport lovers? How do they use short video apps? So along this research line, we turn our focus to self-made sport influencers, the everyday people. They might have the skill set, but not necessarily an athlete. That's when we got in contact with multi-channel network MCNs that focus on grassroots sport influencers. The sport-focused MCNs broadly classify the influencers into 3 categories: fitness and running, basketball, soccer, extreme sports such as skateboarding and parachuting. What they post are very entertaining short videos showcasing skills or explaining training knowledge. Compared to conventional photo-centric platforms such as Instagram, videos could demonstrate the charm of motion. So as Dr. Maisie Su has done a wonderful job in explaining what is MCN, so I will just briefly touch upon this concept. The multi-channel networks help the influencer to create content, also connecting with the platform, Douyin, TikTok, and sponsored brands. Notably, there's a burgeoning of MCNs. So many startup MCNs are focusing on a specific section of the influencers economy, and sport is one of them. Given these MCNs are startups, therefore they have less resources compared to the established MCNs. This provides a unique angle to explore how media practitioners and macro-influencers are making profit in this industry. So as you may see in this figure, there exist multiple stakeholders behind the popularity of Douyin and TikTok, which means there are power dynamics among these bi-directional relationships. So we are interested in how power structures shapes each entity's perception and behaviors within the influencer economy, especially for these sports-focused influencers and MCNs. They're kind of late to the game. So it will be interesting to explore the TikTok Douyin culture through the lenses of startup and entrepreneurship. Our initial idea is to do a case study with one sport-focused MCN. However, I do encounter some gatekeeper effect from the managers where she won't allow me to ask questions regarding influencer career goals and their relationships with MCN. She just doesn't want them to think about what they can complain about MCNs. So later I decided to branch out my search for interviewees where I allowed to ask about their authentic opinions and about their collaborations with MCNs. So we first asked about the role of MCNs, and these CEOs and managers describe their role as threefolded. They provide guidance, they connect the influencers with the social media platform, and also help them to negotiate with the sponsored brand. And one particular interesting finding is that they said they will purchase traffic from Douyin, which means the system will promote the post to a wider range of audience. And these CEOs have different philosophies of running MCNs. One is more like babysitting on call 24 hours. The other one is more like an PhD advisor, provide very broad guidance and only reach out when major opportunities occur. And there are some challenges facing these MCNs. The first one is an influencer retention. The influencers are suffering from career fatigue. And also, it's hard to match the right influencer with the sponsors. The brands are constantly looking for the most appropriate influencers. And the third one is the constraint of the development of the companies. That is limited to the development of the sport industry. The sport industry in China is less developed as compared with Western countries. That means they have less audience on Douyin, and that limits their ability to compete against other more established MCNs. And when asked about their perception of the industry, they said that they admit that the competition level is low at the moment, which means they have more power in selecting influencers. However, they also mentioned about other established MCNs don't have inside knowledge of the sport, which means that they don't know the sport, so that they do not know how to capture the beauty of the sport within a short video. And regarding their perception of influencers, Interestingly, they recognize that the commercialization value is more important than likes, which means that the ability of attracting sponsors and advertisement is the most important criteria when evaluating the value of an influencer. And they also heavily concerned about the turnover of the influencers. So their strategy is to sign a wide range of potential influencers. And one CEO notes that out of 40 influencers, only 1 or 2 have the ability to become the macro influencers. Most of the influencers have their limitation about reaching the top of this industry. So when I interview the influencers, they talk both positive impact and negative impact after they sign a contract with an MCN. The positive impact including they definitely strengthen power when negotiating with the platform and the sponsor's brand, and they help to purchase traffic on Douyin, which means they amplify the influence on Douyin. And MCN also serve as an external motivation for constant post updates. These influencers also mentioned about the fatigue. They need to create content every day to keep the stickiness of their followers and being perceived as attractive by the platform. So MCN indeed is an intrinsic motivation. But there also have negative impact. So before when they just start to post on Douyin, they feel like they're being self-employed and creative. And after I sign a contract with the MCN, they kind of form a new employer and employee relationship. So that poses constraint on their content creation. And oftentimes they will feel like the lack of support, especially when they have disputes with other stakeholders, such as their fans. And regarding their perception of the platform, they complain about Douyin care about traffic the most. So the diffusion of eye-catching misinformation is faster than legitimate content. That related to the audience. Yeah, and then related to the audience. So the essence of the short form video is about entertainment. And the audience also lack of expertise and knowledge in sport. So therefore, the audience will be more attracted to some misinformation. And finally, I asked them about the 2 most popular monetization strategies. One is social commerce. And interestingly, both MCNs and sport-related influencers are hesitant to do social commerce as well as the live streaming because they recognize they don't have enough resources to manage the logistics about both social commerce and live streaming. And also they pointed out that live streaming is very much driven by engaging personalities, which is very demanding for some influencers. So moving forward, we want to conduct a longitudinal examination of the relationship over time to establish an influencer life cycle, because we recognize that there's constant negotiation between stakeholders within the influencer economy. So we want to know that how the relationship with the MCNs will change as an influencer grow from macro to meso to macro stages, and what happened when in the decline stage. We believe that this question is exciting, and we look forward to next steps of our research. With that, I conclude my presentation today. Thank you, and thank you, Bondi.
Thank you so much, Iran. Really appreciate this. We are now going to transit to the power combination of Hartung, Welsh, Henry, and Elbry. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, can you see me and hear me and etc.?
Yep, we can see your slides
Beautiful.
and we can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Fabulous. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Hartung, and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Education at Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne. And today I'm really just going to be sharing some preliminary work exploring teachers' use of TikTok, especially in the Australian context. And this is part of a sort of a broader new project that I've been working on with colleagues Rosie Welch, Natalie Hendry, and Kath Albury. So over the last year, the events of 2020 have really renewed interest and appreciation in teachers. And a lot of that's, based on this idea of viewing teachers as frontline workers who have had to not only grapple with a pandemic, but sudden shift to teaching online, digital by default, if you like, and oftentimes with very little support or assistance. And so TikTok has been uniquely placed as a platform for helping those teachers to share their experiences with each other, and also provide some visibility around their work for the general public. And this has been met with a significant amount of attention and especially among people who are potentially aspiring to be teachers themselves. One exemplar of the sorts of teachers that have been particularly popular on TikTok is Mackenzie Adams. And Mackenzie Adams, some of you are probably familiar with her video that went viral a few months ago. She posted very innocently posted a video of herself while trying to teach a group of kindergarteners over Zoom. And it's a funny video, and it shows her being very energetic and also very patient with her students. So the results was she ended up getting, I think, 10 million views within a week, and a number of interviews with various media outlets. She was based in Washington, and she said of this, "I honestly just wanted to see what I looked like while I taught, kind of as a reflection tool. I wanted to see, am I energetic? Am I engaging? I was like, I'll just post, take a quick video and watch it back later, probably delete." But then, of course, it gained a huge amount of traction, and she now has hundreds of thousands of followers. In this interview that she gave with a particular, I think it was Today in the US, they asked her what she thought about the response to her videos on TikTok, but also other teachers on TikTok. And she said, "I really hope that teachers are getting the recognition they deserve right now. The outpouring of love has been great." And it's really clear from the media. I mean, a lot of people were sharing her video on TikTok, but beyond TikTok, sort of professing this is the exact example of why teachers should be paid $1 million a year, etc., etc. So we've been really interested in how these teachers are being depicted, what kinds of teachers are utilizing TikTok. And our project really speaks to two questions that are very much interrelated. So the first is, what sort of teaching identities and practices are generated? What are the ones that are celebrated, that make the news? But also, what are the sort of potential teacher identities and practices that don't quite make the cut, the ones that perhaps don't even have any visibility on TikTok for particular reasons? And we're also interested in the effects. So in terms of public perceptions of the teaching profession, and in particular, the effects on pre-service teachers. And two of us, myself and Rosie Welch, we work in teacher education. So we're particularly interested in the kinds of ways in which teachers are kind of responding to these sort of teachers on TikTok. So one particularly pertinent example of a teacher in the Australian context is Mr. Luke. So Mr. Luke, I first came across him earlier this year when one of my students, one of my pre-service teachers, interviewed him for a YouTube series called Real Talks. So this series is essentially pre-service teachers interviewing practicing teachers and asking them about their experiences, sharing their, the realities of the teaching profession. And this is something that really speaks to pre-service teachers' desire for insights into the profession, practical insights, which I think sometimes I dare say they feel that they don't always receive through their university experience. And this idea of the real and, you know, the authentic experience is something that we keep returning to as well. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with other work. So Mr. Luke is a 30-year-old primary school teacher in South Australia. And what's kind of interesting about him is over the last year, he posts content generally related to his teaching and his love for teaching, his, you know, little daily anecdotes about a cute thing a student said, or he'll post something about his teaching philosophy or what he thinks it means to be a teacher, or he'll be excited because book week is coming up, and so he'll want to show you what costumes he's picked out to surprise his students, that sort of thing. He also loves plants, so those two things kind of make up his TikTok content. He's accrued a significant following in the last year, 388,000 followers, some 8.6 million likes. And so in terms of those followers, he tends to be followed with quite a mix of people, he says. So some are, and this is based on what he said in the interview with Jess, who's my student. So some of them are his own students. He's happy that his own students are able to engage with him on the platform. Parents of his students are there, other teachers, colleagues, as well as just members of the general public and aspiring pre-service teachers. My student Jess, case in point. So to give you a sense, we're planning on interviewing him probably in the new year at this stage, but I'm going to just show you a few key kind of excerpts from his interview with Jess that I think speak to some of the complexities of what it means to be a teacher who uses social media and specifically TikTok. So Jess asked, what has been the biggest surprise for you with coming into the actual industry of teaching? And for Luke, he said it was really the pace of it all, he said. How quickly things change, you know, adapting to new policies, guidelines, practice styles, etc. And so I think, and the reason I sort of thought this would be an interesting excerpt to mention is that there's something about TikTok that allows teachers to capture that pace in a way that I don't necessarily think initial teacher education is always able to demonstrate or show pre-service teachers. So there's an alignment there with the pace of these short clips that kind of capture little moments. He also spoke about the juggles, and Jess was particularly interested in how he juggled social media with teaching, because a lot of the time teachers are told, stay off social media, it's dangerous, it's not, you know, nothing good can come from it, you need to present a professional image, etc. And he said, you know, it's definitely a juggling game, and it's important to distinguish your personal life from your professional life, not get those two things confused. There's an interesting kind of assumption there that you can create these two different worlds. And Jess says, and this very much solidifies that idea of the identities that might exist in this space. Yeah, like there's Mr. Luke and then there's Luke. And he said, yes, exactly. But he did point out that he had boundaries, particular boundaries about how he used TikTok. And he let his leadership team at the school know that that was the work he was doing. And that was very much you know, something that he wanted them to be on board with so that he could have particular boundaries. So the work that we're doing in exploring these teachers on TikTok links to particular literatures, two bodies of literature in particular, social media influences and authenticity. I'm not going to go into that because I think most of you are familiar with Crystal's work and those other names at the bottom there. But we're also interested in making links between that body of literature and the body of literature that's looked at teacherpreneurs, the ways in which teachers are being encouraged to use online spaces and social media to promote themselves and a particular kind of professional identity. So it's quite early for us to be theorizing, but we have a few initial hunches in relation to the affordances that TikTok provides teachers. We argue, and I think this links quite nicely in with the keynote, that it does foster particular kinds of forms of teaching cultures and subcultures. It works to that rhythm and pace of professional practice. It provides the authentic or real examples of practice, and I obviously use scare quotes there. It encourages alternative avenues of professional development beyond these kind of strict ways in which perhaps initial teacher education is taught typically. It helps them to playfully reflect on their practice, and they get to capture themselves and present themselves rather than just being the fodder of media debates, which in turn influences public perception. But it's also a political practice, and one that is worth recognising. It blurs personal boundaries that not every teacher is in a position to do. It relies on particular invisible labour, and downplays certain realities of the profession. The admin involved, the monotony of certain aspects of the job, the stress, discomfort, the politics, all these things don't necessarily come through in like a fun video where you show you're excited about something that students are doing. It also reinforces this idea that a teacher is a solo performer, that it's all about how animated and energetic you are, and that you're just talking at students more than seeing it as a relational practice. And then sort of lastly, essentially all of this is culminated in the fact that it privileges particular teacher dispositions, particular identities. The energetic, white, polished, young, extroverted young person is really who's getting spoken about the most in these places. So, and I think this is just a quote from Crystal, it pivots on the inclusion-exclusionary binary. So we're about to do some more focus groups and interviews, but for now, I'll leave it there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We will now change over to Newton and Sutherland. So Giselle and Claire, whenever you're ready, please.
Hello, everybody. Donor conceived. I just want to start by thanking the organisers for including us in today's event. I'm really enjoying the talk so far. Okay, so who are we and how did we get here? Donor conceived using donor sperm in the early 90s and doing a PhD on donor conceived people's experiences, views and support needs. We're both based at UNSW Sydney.
Hey, Claire and Giselle, sorry to interrupt.
And I'm a cis queer woman who would need a donor to have a child with my partner who's also a cis woman, and I'm also currently researching TikTok and health focused content. So basically I noticed that TikTok had a fair bit of donor conceived content, insider as a donor conceived person, and Claire would be an outsider. But I guess as the project continued, we quickly realized that maybe this wasn't exactly accurate, and Claire was actually going on all around her. My partner, I definitely wasn't as much of an outsider as I originally thought. Okay, so a little about the context of donor conception in Australia. So there are an estimated 20 to 60,000 donor conceived people in Australia, although these are kind of unofficial, undocumented people. There's no official records. So many donor conceived people seek information about and contact with their biological parents and siblings. And donor conception offers, at the same time, opportunities for family building for couples experiencing biological or social infertility, such as same-sex couples. So there is somewhat of a kind of tension or conflict because many donor conceived people themselves now as adults don't necessarily believe that the practice of donor conception is an ethical practice when some couples only have this as a means of having a child. So on TikTok, this donor conception content is largely US focused, but also serves as a prompt to reflect on broader issues associated with donor conception that impact donor conceived people and recipient parents in Australia. I just want to check, are our slides visible?
Hi, Claire and Giselle. Your slides are visible, but your audio is lagging. So we suggest maybe turning off your video so we can focus on your sound and your slides.
Sorry.
That's okay. NBN, hey?
Yeah. How's that? Is that better?
Yep, let's carry on.
So now to just give a brief overview of donor conceived TikTok, here you can see that we've got the hashtag donor hashtag sperm donor. So many of the recipient parents making content, those who already have donor conceived children or are hoping to have donor conceived children, are LGBTQ+, with lots of, I guess, majority cis queer women in monogamous relationships. So these parents, from their perspective, are producing content associated with insights into their conception experience, very much focused on the baby and getting to the baby stage. So often the videos are an attempt to address misconceptions that the general public might have about donor conception, whereas there's also a smaller set of content by donor conceived adults reflecting on the process of discovering they were donor conceived or are donor conceived, and exploring some of the difficulties or struggles to find biological parents or siblings created through the same donor. And obviously, lots of these people are doing so through DNA testing platforms like Ancestry.com or My Family. Okay. Sometimes, as I've mentioned, these two positions come into conflict. So yeah, and lots of the content is dominated by US perspectives. There's a much larger industry in the US. But it's interesting from an Australian point of view, looking at this content and considering what we have in common, what the differences may be. So this is a creative, it's a kind of a small experiment that Claire and I are, and it builds on some work on kitchen table reflexivity. So it uses TikTok as a generative element of the research encounter, which prompts conversations between the researchers. So we were really interested in how this content is not separate from us. It's very much related to our identities. So we literally sat at a kitchen table at our office and worked through watching TikToks together, and it took 5 hours. We audio recorded our conversations, which were kind of, we'd watch videos and then go off on different tangents and then come back and watch some more videos. And we each wrote reflections before and after. So this is comparable to kind of photo elicitation studies, where again, the TikToks are part of generating, it's a generative element in the interview. And we felt like we were in this dual position of as both researcher and participant. So talking about our personal views in these situated insights that recognize our role in shaping the analysis and in the data collection. Also drawing on stuff about, or work about collective autoethnography, reflexivities of discomfort. And I guess I'd also note that during COVID and during crisis, it's an interesting method to examine our own experiences when we might have difficulties finding or being able to engage with participants. This is a way of self-empowering, ethical and useful method.
So we'll just run through quickly some of the preliminary themes. So discomfort was a major theme, but was also a productive guide for us in identifying where the key tensions were, and it really helped us notice what the key issues were, but these tensions between donor-conceived people and recipient parents whose content was brought together by these hashtags. And really having the TikToks as a prompt for our discussions really acted as a way to blunt this discomfort. Rather than the two of us sort of directly facing each other in an interview format, we were able to use the TikToks to kind of ease these moments of discomfort while allowing us to delve into some quite difficult issues where Giselle and I, because of our identities, were positioned quite oppositionally around what donor conception should be. Another really interesting theme was convergence, where we were not only looking at the way the hashtags brought together these very different communities, and also us as researchers who had very different experiences. But the method in allowing us to talk through these tensions, it allowed us to see the way our experiences did converge around certain issues. So realizing the way that the experience of coming out as a queer person, or the experience of realizing that you're donor conceived, could involve the same sort of experiences of potential family rejection and realizing sort of family love as a conditional thing. So those areas of convergence were really interesting. We also dwelled a lot on these unresolved and perhaps unresolvable questions around can donor conception ever be ethical? Will things be okay as long as the child grows up knowing their genetic family? And these are things that both Giselle and I highlighted in our reflections. But we found that the TikToks acted as a way to frame the interview in which it wasn't set up as something where things necessarily had to be resolved. And that was really helpful. So where to now? We have a couple of directions that we want to take this. We're really interested in thinking about how we might employ this method with research participants. We are looking to go further into a digital ethnography, looking at donor-conceived communities on TikTok. And questions we're really especially interested in hearing from the audience is just, are there ways to kind of replicate the unresolved nature of our findings in writing up the study, and any suggestions for further uses or adaptations of the method. Thank you.